Welcome to Georgia Life Sciences podcast, bringing you the latest insights and innovations from Georgia's life sciences industry. I'm your host, Maria Thacker-Goethe, President and CEO of Georgia Life Sciences, formerly known as Georgia Bio, and I'm excited to take you behind the scenes with industry leaders, innovators, and policymakers shaping the future of biotech and medtech across the Peach State. Please note that our organization has recently rebranded from Georgia Bio to Georgia Life Sciences. While earlier episodes may reference Georgia Bio, we are now operating under our new name, Georgia Life Sciences, reflecting our broader commitment to the life sciences community. Thank you for your understanding as we transition to this exciting new chapter. Welcome back to BioBeat, Georgia's Life Sciences podcast. I'm Maria Thacker with Georgia Bio, and we're excited to have you. We're filming today and recording today at the Georgia Life Sciences Summit. I'm here today with Dr. Chris Pack, Director of Preclinical Studies at Metaclipse Therapeutics. Chris, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, Maria.
No, it's great. I'm really excited to dive in and learn about Metaclipse Therapeutics. But before we do that, can you tell me a little bit more about you and how you came into this role and, your career path?
Well, I started out doing my bachelor's degree and master's degree at the University of Tennessee, where I became interested in immunology there. And we were discussing earlier, my path into immunology was kind of serendipitous.
Yes.
I was wandering through the hallway to argue for additional points on a biochemistry exam and got grabbed by a friend of mine that I knew. And she plopped me down in the immunology professor's office. And he looked at me and he says, "Why are you here? You want a job or something?" And I said, "Okay." And I started the next day, and that started my career in immunology.
And you did not pursue medical school then after that?
I did not, because I really enjoyed the lab and what we were studying there. We were studying a model called EAE, which is a model for multiple sclerosis. So started out looking at autoimmune conditions, and then went on to join a different lab there to pursue my PhD. With Dr. Barry Rouse, looking at herpes simplex virus. And I'd always been very interested in viral immunology. And so I designed neonatal vaccines and mucosal vaccines using heat shock proteins there.
Oh, that's fascinating. Then how did you end up in Atlanta?
So it turns out Dr. Rouse was longtime friends with Rafi Ahmed at Emory. So I would often accompany Dr. Rouse on his escapades down to Emory and hang out with Rafi and his entire lab. So I really got to hang out and do journal clubs with, turns out some of the, John Weary and some of the really seminal people in immunology today. And I knew it was special, but I didn't realize just quite how special it really was.
It's exciting. Well, it sounds like you definitely a unique path. How did you end up then coming to Metaclipse?
So, I then came to Emory and studied with Aaron Lukatcher's lab, where we worked on polyomavirus, which kind of started to bridge the gap between, that's an oncogenic virus.
Okay.
And so a lot of the same issues and problems in the immune response happen with persistent viral infections, as does with cancer. And that area tended to overlap more and more over the last several decades. And so Dr. Selvaraj, which was one of the co-founders of Metaclipse, worked in the lab next to Aaron Lukatcher. And when my postdoc wrapped up there, he was like, "I'm starting a company. And would you like to, this is the technology." And about that time, my mom actually came down, was diagnosed with breast cancer. Oh. And luckily she survived it, and that was
Excellent.
14 years ago. But that became like something like, okay, I really want to work on breast cancer.
Okay.
And so we started a company with Shaker Reddy and myself and Selva, and we started with triple negative breast cancer as our first indication, and we developed all the preclinical research and built the company all the way from proving the point in mice all the way up to now we're getting ready to start our first clinical trial.
No, that's really fascinating. So now remind me, y'all are a GRA, a Georgia Research Alliance company, right?
GRA was one of our first organizations to fund our research. They funded some of the initial purification of proteins and some of the early clinical work, even before we were starting with phase 1 SBIRs.
Okay.
So they really helped to launch, and Lee Heron had a huge impact on that. He was one of the probably our biggest champion at GRA.
And just for listeners, we honored Lee Heron, Dr. Lee Heron, with the Lifetime Achievement Award that the organization has now only given out 6 times in our 35-year history at our opening reception last night.
So we're really going to miss Lee.
Yeah, we really do miss him. Yes. Well, that's amazing that you got some funding from GRA to help get you off the ground and do those early studies. But Metaclipse has 2 products in your pipeline right now, and I want to ask about both of them. But the first one you'd already started talking about in that pathway. So give us an update. I know there was some FDA approval in summer 2023. So how's that all moving forward?
We filed our IND in triple-negative breast cancer. So it is a personalized immunotherapy. So the way we make the therapy is we take about 1 gram of the patient's tumor tissue, and on that tumor tissue will be all the tumor antigens that your immune system could potentially respond to. We then homogenize that material and make it into what we call tumor membrane vesicles. And then that material by itself then would not be immunogenic if you just injected it back into the body. So we can modify that by putting our immunomodulatory cytokines and co-stimulatory molecules, which we have a special GPI tail, and it allows that to spontaneously incorporate into the membranes of those tumor material. And then we use that as an intradermal injection to stimulate anti-tumor immunity. And we do this in combination with checkpoint inhibitors like anti-PD-1 antibodies.
Okay. We have a lot of patients that we work with and patient advocacy groups we work with, and I know some are in the breast cancer space. So, what is that timeline if you're talking to the layperson, if someone's going to get this treatment from getting?
So it's actually because we don't have to make, like with CAR T cells, you don't have to, or dendritic cell therapies, you don't have to make any kind of live cell cultures. We can actually have this vaccine ready through our lab in just 2 to 3 days.
Oh wow!
And
from
receiving. So
okay.
it's received on dry ice, processed, and then frozen back and ready to ship to the patient. So the only hold up a little bit is we need to do a 14-day sterility testing before administering back to the patient. So it's ready to go within 18 days.
And you're about to have your first patient? Is that what you mentioned earlier?
We're looking to dose our first patient in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Wow, that's exciting. You'll have to keep us posted on that. We can add that update and link to any updates about that on the website, which, by the way, they have a new website. Go check it out. So during that process and that pathway and learning before we move on to the next product, what were some lessons learned for early stage entrepreneurs? You may want to give them tips about whether it's about how you hire executives or how you approach working with the university. Any tips?
I would say it's form a diverse team where everyone has a strong passion for that area. They really want to make a difference, and they bring to the table the skills to move that product forward, whether that be regulatory, preclinical research, it could be entrepreneurial. They need to have the right connections in the investment community to be able to call up those people at VC groups or wherever and say, hey, I've got a great new project I'm working on. I want to bring you guys in on this. And if you have those kinds of things, it really makes a big difference in moving it forward.
Yeah. No, that's good for everyone to hear. So I know you're also working with Georgia State now. So tell me a little bit about that indication.
We're also using our GPI cytokines to help to make virus-like particles more immunogenic. And for that, we're using influenza VLPs.
Okay.
And influenza VLPs are immunogenic and normally in young people, but the vaccines for influenza are not all that effective as you get into the elderly population, 65 and older. So we found that we were able to modify influenza VLPs, which have an envelope, and we can put GPI cytokines to help to modulate the immune response and boost the immune response in elderly mice. So these are mice that are 16 to 18 months old, which mimic the defects that you see in a 65-plus human being. And so we've moved that project forward with Dr. Sang-Moo Kang at Georgia State. And we're looking forward to moving that towards toxicology studies and phase 1 clinical trials as well.
Wow, that's really exciting.
And we did I like that we did a phase 1 and 2 contracts with NIAID to fund those studies.
That's outstanding. Yeah. Any lessons learned from that experience?
Well, that was actually a fantastic experience. That was a contract. So it was more looking at like, we stumbled into that area by looking at their contract announcements, and there was like, well, I see there's something here for influenza vaccines for the elderly. And we have this influenza vaccine that works better when we put the cytokines on it, IL-12 and GM-CSF. What would happen if we tried this in elderly mice? Would it work better? And the science seemed to add up. So we wrote a phase 1 contract for about $300,000. And they were like, oh, yeah, we're very interested in that. And that progressed to a phase 2 contract and then of $2 million. And then we were able to pony that up into a SARS-CoV-2 vaccine.
Oh, wow.
By putting an RBD domain during the pandemic.
Yes.
And so that ended up being about $4.2 million in funding on
and
contracts.
Which group was this? This is with
Georgia State's group.
Georgia State's group. That's right. Okay.
So
that's really outstanding. Hear so many stories from COVID, but it's nice to hear these.
That was the go time for us.
Yeah.
There was no working from home. Everyone was working, 12 hours a day in the lab.
Yeah, I don't know many people in our industry that were working from home during COVID, and
No.
unless it was more on the administrative side. But wow, that's really fascinating. Is there anything else about Metaclipse that you haven't had a chance to mention that you want to mention?
I just think we're excited to finally move into our first in human dosing.
Yep.
Which will be either in triple-negative breast cancer or possibly head and neck cancer, which we're working with Dr. Dongwen Shen at Edinburgh University, and he's been very instrumental in helping to drive that clinical program forward for us.
No, that's outstanding. And I do want to thank you. Metaclipse has always been great at offering internships and bringing students into your space to tour the facility, which is just below the north side of the Atlanta perimeter. And that's not Tucker, is it? That's just unincorporated DeKalb County?
It's kind of Chambly.
It's Chambly. Oh, it's Chambly. Even there you go.
Yeah, Chambly.
Yeah. So they're in town. So it's been great talking to you about Metaclipse. I do like to end the podcast with a more fun question. Either tell me why Georgia for your company, or a fun fact about you.
I enjoy hanging out with my cats.
Uh-huh.
I have a couple of crazy little cats, and I love fly fishing, golfing, hiking, and I used to be an avid rock climber, but not so much anymore in my 50s.
Yeah, that happens.
Falling off cliffs is not good for 50-year-olds.
I did a lot of caving. I did a lot of caving when I was younger.
Oh, you were a spelunker. I didn't know that.
Yes, I was a spelunker, but I now...
that looks scary
now. You have a
now.
small child, and you suddenly have a different sense of not wanting to die.
300 foot down on a rope in a cave.
No, not anymore. And now I think with social media, people are more aware of things and terrible things that can happen with some of this stuff. But it's an adventure that's certainly built for certain types of people. So whether you're spelunking or caving, and it sounds to me like you need to work on your golf game, though. So we may need to bring back that golf tournament we used to host.
Let's bring back the golf tournament. Okay. I agree.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today,
Pleasure.
Chris.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to BioBeat, Georgia's Life Sciences podcast. I'm excited again to come from you from the 2024 Georgia Life Sciences Summit. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Georgia Life Sciences podcast series. If you enjoyed the conversation, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. It helps us reach more listeners like you. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. For more insights into Georgia's thriving life sciences community, be sure to visit us at galifesciences.org. And thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next time.